Welcome to this video where we'll explore motive-driven metric manipulations in Western art music over the past 2 centuries. By the end of this journey, you'll gain insights into 3 types of these manipulations, their analytical representation, and their impact on the musical process. Let's start by immersing ourselves in an excerpt performed by the Noah Quartet. This piece is from the 4th movement of Beethoven's String Quartet in C major, Opus 59 No. 3. As you listen, I encourage you to tap along with the music, feel the ongoing beats, and pay close attention to the later section where only the first violin remains playing. During the passage with only the first violin, you might experience a peculiar sensation. The perceived beat and meter seem to deviate from the previous section. This exemplifies the essence of metric manipulation, where a new, temporary meter clashes with its preceding context. Drawing from 18th century music theoretical texts and contemporary theories on musical meter, Danuta Mirka's influential book, Metric Manipulations in Haydn and Mozart, sheds light on how these manipulations were employed in chamber music of that era and deepens our understanding on this phenomenon. Expanding on Mirka's work, James Sullivan's article, Metric Manipulations in Post-Tonal Music, explores how composers in the 20th and 21st centuries utilize metric manipulations. The examples in this video are adapted and modified from Sullivan's article. A crucial element of these metric manipulations is their motive-driven nature. Each manipulation utilizes a specific arrangement of parallel melodic segments that share similarities or are identical. In our Beethoven example, we can observe the consistent use of 2 distinct motives. The initial 4-note motive, highlighted in blue, begins with a descending leap and followed by 2 staccato attacks. In contrast, the first violin introduces the second motive, marked in red, which features ascending stepwise motion. To visually represent the perceived meters associated with the motives, we can use a dot diagram developed by Fred Lerdahl and Ray Jackendoff. Each dot in the diagram represents a beat, marking a specific point in time. These dots function hierarchically across multiple levels to create a metric grid that reflects the perceived meter. For example, let's consider the uppermost dots, representing the continuous 8th note pulse level. In the case of the first 4-note motive, these pulses are perceived as grouped in pairs at the quarter note, half note, and whole note levels, suggesting a 2-2 meter. On the other hand, the continuous ascending 8th notes are initially perceived as grouped in sets of 3, creating a continuous sequence of dotted quarter note beats. These groups of 3 are then further grouped in pairs, forming a 6-8 meter. Now, we can move on to categorizing the type of metric manipulation exhibited in the Beethoven example, known as imbroglio. This manipulation involves a change in the metric period, which refers to the interval between successive beats within a metric level. In this case, the initial motive establishes a primary, duple 2-2 meter. Yet, the new motive then leads the listener into a false 6-8 meter, signifying a change in the metric period, where one of the metric levels articulates beats grouped in sets of 3 instead. In Penderecki's Duo Concertante for violin and double bass, we encounter another example of imbroglio. In measure 9, as we enter a new section, the violin introduces a V-shaped motive in triple meter. However, this motive quickly gives way to the bass's ostinato pattern, suggesting a quadruple meter. Although the regular meter fades as the ostinato dissolves, the triple meter resurfaces when the V-shaped motive returns in measure 23. This time, it alternates with a new descending stepwise motive in duple meter. Now, let's listen to Noah Bendix-Balgley and Matthew McDonald's performance of this passage. Pay close attention to the shifts in metric period that occur with the changing motives. Let's now shift our focus to the second type of metric manipulation, called close imitation. Unlike imbroglio, close imitation doesn't alter the metric period, but instead features change in the metric phase. Before delving into the specifics, let's take a moment to listen to the Castalian Quartet's performance of the opening of the third movement of Haydn's String Quartet in D, Opus 76 No. 2, which exemplifies this specific type of metric manipulation. You may have noticed that this excerpt is divided into two separate registral streams, with the viola and cello imitating the two violins one measure behind. When we examine each stream separately, we find that they both have the same metric period, articulating a duple hypermeter. However, the metric layer suggested by the viola and cello is out of sync with that of the violins, lagging one hyperbeat behind. This lack of synchronization in the metric frameworks is a key characteristic of close imitation. Close imitation can also manifest in a lower metric level, as demonstrated in the latter half of the opening phrase in Schoenberg's Concerto for Piano and Orchestra, Opus 42. Here, both the right and the left-hand layers present a sequence of dotted rhythmic motives, suggesting two layers of 2/8 meter that are an eighth note apart. However, what sets this example apart is that the first half of the phrase actually begins in 3/8 meter. In other words, an imbroglio occurs at the midpoint of the phrase, transforming the perceived meter from 3/8 to 2/8. Then, the imitative texture amplifies another form of metric manipulation. Together, these elements give rise to the third type of metric manipulation, called imitative imbroglio. Now, let's listen to Glenn Gould's performance of this opening phrase and experience how these metric manipulations enhance the phrase's momentum. Before proceeding to our final example, let's take a moment to summarize the three types of metric manipulation we've discussed so far using schematic diagrams. The first type is imbroglio, where the metric period of a new motivic pattern differs from the previous one. The second type is close imitation, where the motivic layers share the same metric period but have an out-of-sync metric phase. Lastly, we have imitative imbroglio, which combines the effects of imbroglio and close imitation. In this case, there is a shift in the perceived meter with different metric periods, along with an imitative texture created by the new motivic layers. Our last example comes from Schoenberg's Valse de Chopin in Pierrot Lunaire, where metric manipulations help enhance the text-expressive aspect and contribute to the song's dramatic progression. Before we dive into the details, let's listen to the complete piece performed by Patricia Kopachinskaya and get an overall impression of the music. Pay close attention to the 5th, 6th, and 9th lines, where metrical manipulations emphasize emotionally charged words like despair and exulting. Now that we've become acquainted with the song, let's delve into the details. First, the piece begins with the expectation of a waltz-like character, as implied by the title. And indeed, the rhythmic pattern known as en-pas-pas, characteristic of a waltz, is consistently present throughout the piece, suggesting a triple meter. This pattern is marked in red brackets. Additionally, the vocal part introduces another motivic pattern with dotted rhythms, indicated in red shading, further reinforcing the triple meter. Let's now experience how these motives establish the triple meter in the first stanza of the song.
Wie ein blasser Tropfen Blut färbte Lippen einer Kranken. Also ruhend auf diese Tönen ein vernichtungssüchtiger Reiz.
The established triple meter, however, begins to dissolve towards the end of the first section. In measures 12 to 13, the piano introduces a repeating quarter-eighth-eighth rhythmic pattern, indicated by the dashed brackets, foreshadowing a shift to a 2/4 meter. Indeed, in measure 14, an imbroglio occurs. The 2/4 meter is established through a series of dotted quarter-plus-eighth rhythmic patterns, which are passed between piano and voice. Additionally, in the flute and clarinet parts, highlighted in yellow and green, close imitation further intensifies the tension. Now, let's listen to this passage and experience how these metric manipulations disrupt the previously established meter and portray the unsettling emotional impact of the text.
Süchtiger Reiz. Würdelos Akkorde stören, der Verzweiflung eisgetragen. Wie ein blasser Tropfen Blut.
Following a recitative-like passage, an instrumental interlude in measures 23 to 26 reintroduces the en-pas-pas rhythm and the associated triple meter. The triple meter is emphasized in the ensuing climactic passage in measures 27 to 29, with cascading scalar descents played first by the woodwinds and then by the piano, marked in red brackets. However, the previous 2/4 imbroglio dotted rhythmic pattern, articulated by the vocal part, is also superimposed here, creating a clash of conflicting meters that heightens the emotional impact. As the vocal part progresses to the text, melancholy dismal waltzes, only fragments of the en-pas-pas rhythm remain, and the music gradually fades out to the end. Now, let's take a final moment to listen to this climactic passage and experience the underlying metric manipulations. By now, we've reached the end of this video, and hopefully, you've gained a solid understanding of metric manipulation, including its various types, methods of representation, and its potential contribution to creating musical and expressive effects. If you're interested in further exploring the sources and performers mentioned in this video, please refer to the provided reference list. Thank you for watching.